that Greens should embrace the eco-socialist label, I think you will still benefit from this presentation, because in large part what we're talking about are building new economic institutions that clearly square with green values like community-based economics. So this is not something new. So we can continue to have that discussion about whether capitalism is the problem and still, as a party, be supporting the construction of these new institutions. Now, this is just here, this is a slide just to get us all on the same page. When we're talking about capitalism, we're talking about a social system. And these are some of its main features: private ownership, production for profit, division into two principal classes, a class of employers and a class of employees. And it is a system based on exploitation. I'll let you read this to get the joke here real quick. But that's basically how it works. The employees are exploited. This is how all that money gravitates to the top 1%. Now, just as it's important to have a clear definition of capitalism, it's equally important to have a clear conception of socialism. The word, if you ask 10 people what socialism means, you'll probably get at least 11 different answers. It is something that, there's a lot of confusion about it. So it is important to define our terms. A lot of people equate socialism with what I would describe as the social democracy or democratic socialist systems that they have in Norway and Denmark, et cetera. And there are some advantages compared to the laissez-faire system in the United States to going that route, but that's not what we're talking about, especially when we're talking about eco-socialism. Others associate the word with a top-down party-run state and a command economy like the old Soviet Union. That also is not what we're talking about when we're talking about eco-socialism. We're referring to a different kind of system, and it was adopted by our national platform in 2016. This is some of the key language where the Green Party seeks to build an alternative economic system based on ecology and decentralization of power, an alternative that rejects both capitalism with its private ownership over most production and the state socialist systems that assume control without democratic local decision-making. Instead, it goes on and describes it, as something that would involve things like large-scale green public works, municipalization, and workplace and community democracy. We shouldn't get too hung up on the labels. We like to use the term eco-socialism, but there are other terms that could describe this system as well. Here's a more concise definition that in the Green Eco-Socialist Network we have come up with. We're referring to a system based on social ownership, but not state ownership of the instruments of production and exchange, production geared to meet human needs, decisions made democratically by the workers and affected communities themselves, all major social decisions made by society as a whole, an end to the things that come with capitalism, patriarchy, racism, imperialism, and all forms of top-down power and privilege, and all decision-making guided by the overarching need to restore and maintain the health of our natural ecosystem. That has to become part of the democratically planned economy. Now, interestingly, many of you have probably heard of this thing called the solidarity economy movement that David will be talking about in a minute. And this is a definition that comes from the US Solidarity Economy Network. And you'll notice that it's very similar to what we were just talking about. We're talking about it's grounded in solidarity, it's grounded in equity, without the false distinctions that capitalism uses to divide us against one another. The primacy of social welfare over profits, sustainability. There's your eco part of the eco-socialism, social and economic democracy. And it's something that gets constructed organically. It's not something where we have this blueprint that we're all going to just suddenly ascribe to. This is an existing movement. I took this from the US Solidarity Economy Network website, and there are these little groups that David's going to be talking about popping up all over the country. These institutions are already being built, and it's our position that the Green Party should be involved as a force for advocacy of this movement. Now, a lot of people think about this in terms of workers' co-ops, and workers' co-ops are an important part of the institutions we're trying to build. But it's important not to make a panacea out of workers' co-ops, right? Because there has to be changes at the macro level, right? It's not enough to just form little enterprises where workers are controlling the business instead of the corporate model, because that doesn't change things at the macro level. And so I give the example, we don't want workers' co-ops, democratic as they may be, making throwaway plastic bottles or selling collateralized debt obligations or things like that. There has to be system change that has to be coming out of this. There are many examples of this. This is, and I'm just gonna, this is by way of illustration only. There are many kinds of models that could be looked at for this new economy. One comes from the IWW that are many who work for our national party are members of. I'm a member of the IWW, and this is the idea that radical unions will take over the means of production and operate them democratically, and would elect representatives to a central Congress that would be responsible for planning. That's one possible model. Gloria, who works with the Next System Project, longtime, very famous activist, has described another alternative. He calls it the Pluralist Commonwealth model. This is the special effects here. I'm clearly moving for an Oscar in the special effects category here. This is my version of what it could look like. One possibility. You could have a public sector which would handle things like healthcare, education, public welfare. You could have a co-op sector, workers' co-ops organized to basically produce the other goods and services that our society needs. They would send representatives to regional economic planning bodies, and you would still have limited small scale business, small family arts and crafts kinds of things, but capitalism would no longer be the dominant system. So that's another vision. Here's one, a little shout out to Emily Kawano of the Popular Economics, the Center for Popular Economics. This, you can find her actual show at the Solidarity Economy Network website. It's obviously way too involved for me to try to explain here, but just to show that there's been a lot of thinking going into this about how we could reorganize society. I'm going to put this slide up a little later. This is just to show it now. There are a lot of organizations doing this work. It's a very exciting time for people working to build a new system to replace capitalism. A lot of great organizations doing this work. This is just showing you some of the ones that we're aware of that we see value in working with. So I'm gonna, with this, let you get the joke here real quick. With this, I'm going to now turn it over to David and to talk about the next part of this, which he's going to get a little bit more into the solidarity economy movement, which he is deeply involved in Cooperation Humboldt. David?
Thank you so much. And I will ask if I could share my screen as well. That would be helpful.
Here we go.
Let me...
I've set it to allow multiple participants to share their screen right now, so it should work for you.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. So let me go to that and I'll try it over again. And there
you go.
Okay, so thank you very much, Rich. My task in 8 to 9 minutes is to, I've set an alarm for myself, the existing solidarity economy movement. You'll get a link to all of these. So these hyperlinks, I don't know how to share it with you now, but you will all get a copy of this to be able to click the various hyperlinks. So I'm going to just say really quickly, an overview of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network is important because it was formed at the U.S. Social Forum in Atlanta in 2007. It is not a theory in search of a practice so much as a practice in search of a theory. And that's really important because, I often say that theory theory without practice is just contemplation and thinking. That's super important to think, but you've got to actually apply your thoughts. But action without theory is just doing shit. And you might succeed, but it will be by accident. And so those of us at the Green Eco-Socialist Network, those of us at the Solidarity Economy Network are committed to grounding ourselves in a theoretical understanding, how the world works, how we think social change happens, applying it on the ground and being willing to take the data from those experiments and to shift and change it. We are absolutely committed to a theoretical understanding, but we are not dogmatic. We believe we are in a new historic moment because of the end of capitalism and the ecological crisis and rising fascism. Saying it simply, the ecological collapse and the economic collapse of late stage capitalism is causing a political crisis, which we've never seen before, because the current political system literally can't even maintain order. Like, that's really important. We are in systems collapse. What makes the US Solidarity Economy Network really unique is that we are explicitly post-capitalist. We do not believe that capitalism, according to the definitional characteristics that Rich Whitney just described, can be, quote, reformed. And in fact, if you change it so much that you've literally changed the characteristics of the definition. And so I'm not interested in debating somebody about anti-capitalist versus post-capitalist or even reform capitalism. I am willing to engage that conversation, but I'm much more interested in saying, how do we meet people's material needs? How do we engage in a political discourse to find where we can work together and do the work together and catch up with the evolution of the social movements that are actually happening? I did take a note that, and again, as Rich said, there are really groups across the country, so many, and that map will show it, where they are putting this into practice. Cooperation Humboldt and Cooperation Jackson are two examples of these local experiments. I lift them up because I am a co-founder of Cooperation Humboldt. Kali Akuno, a dear friend and colleague and comrade, is in Jackson, Mississippi, and one of the charter members, the founders of this Green Eco-Socialist Network. Kali Akuno and I and many others, Emily Kawano, who wrote the seminal piece Rich Whitney just shared, we are all serving on the board of directors of the US Solidarity Economy Network. I want to touch on and invite a deeper dive on what happened at the recent Resist and Build Summit that Rich Whitney alluded to. And I say with humility and sincerity, I was very pleased to be able to get some Greens to a meeting of real thinkers that included Gar Alperovitz and included all of these big national thinkers. And I was able to bring Greens in because we were not interested in coming into that space in order to get people to beat up on the Democratic Party or join the Green Party. That'll come later. We got into that conversation in order to engage in a non-sectarian way. How can we, as the Green Eco-Socialist Network, relate to the US Solidarity Economy Network and build this growing movement? One of the key things, and I think the Green Party of the United States should be aware of, is the development of a candidate questionnaire identifying 5 particular concrete policies: worker-owned cooperatives, public banking, participatory budgeting, local energy, and community land trusts. These are important because we believe these to be non-reformist reforms. There is a link when you'll get this overall slide that you can go to. In a nutshell, it means this. I believe that the current capitalist system and bourgeois democracy it is currently operating, we cannot simply vote our way in to the transformational change that the Green Party represents. Voting is a critical tactic. It should be part of our overall strategy, but we should actually understand that there is a bigger program at play. A non-reformist reform is one that makes demands on the system so that whether they give them to us or not, we win. If they give it to us, we've made people's lives better. We've improved material conditions. We've changed rules to be able to advance to the next stage of the struggle. If they don't give it to us, we've just proven that they are liars, that they do not believe in genuine democracy, that this whole creation myth of the United States of America is actually a sham. So the non-reformist reform done well is really a win-win situation. You either win the reform or you expose the inherent contradictions of the current system. The next thing that I want to do under that candidate questionnaire, please note on July 13th, Emily Kawano and I will be working with the California Progressive Alliance, the Solidarity Economy Network, and Cooperation Humboldt for a deep dive on how to use this candidate questionnaire. I will make sure, like, all you have to do is click that link and it'll take you to the registration page. Again, I'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of that. But wait, there's more. Emily Kawano and I will also be doing the same presentation on how to use the candidate questionnaire to the Transition US Network. That will happen on July 21st at 11 a.m. The point is, this questionnaire is a concrete tool that we can use to advance our revolutionary concept of restructuring society and democratizing the economy. I'm not going a deep dive, but I will just let you know that there are additional working groups coming out of the Resist and Build Summit, one on building a solidarity economic narrative and demands, creating webinars, essays, etc. Solidarity economy education, specifically using popular education materials and trainings, and then building mutual aid networks that integrate solidarity economy into those networks. So I know that I said a lot. I also will tell you I finished my session in under 8 minutes, and I'm very happy to turn it over to my comrade, Margaret Kimberley.
Now, all right, so everybody can hear me. Great, thank you all. Thank you all so much. Thanks so much to everyone for joining our workshop today. You know, when we got started last year, roughly around this time, in July 2019, the Earth was experiencing record-breaking temperatures. It was the hottest July ever recorded. But, and we knew that, but we did not know that the climate emergency would be followed by a global pandemic in 2020, or that another police murder caught on video would mobilize people to action in this country and all over the world. And I want today to try to pull all this together and talk about how all these things are linked. The climate crisis is a crisis of capitalism, and so are all these other issues which have inspired millions of people to protest. While the murder of George Floyd was the catalyst for this new movement, the reaction went beyond the outrage over his killing. All the elements needed to create a popular upheaval are present today. COVID-19 exposed that the US is a failed state, which not only could not respond to this new disease, but couldn't provide for the needs of 35 million newly unemployed people. And a meager $1,200 was all that the system provided, while the billionaire class that rules over us got even richer. One of the ironies of this time during this quarantine, the shutdown of the capitalist world's industrial capacity, is that the environment has improved. There's noticeably less pollution, less production on use of fossil fuels, cleaner water. And that exposes the paradox of modern life and the damage that what we call civilization creates for all living beings. Yet we're told that the only way to help the unemployed is to return to our deadly civilization and to the possible illness that caused of this disease that created this crisis. But now's the time to reject the idea that the return to everything we experienced pre-COVID is either possible or desirable. We have a chance to start over. We know capitalism damages the planet. Capitalism dictates that some workers are designated as essential, but they are also the lowest paid with the fewest protections. Capitalism demands that groups are marginalized and over-policed, sometimes to the point of death. In this country, anti-Black racism is the principal cause of the oppression, but as the system deteriorates further, more people are getting a taste of this same treatment. And that's why George Floyd's death mobilized them to act. But we also see sleight of hand and political trickery in this politically, potentially powerful, but inexperienced movement. We're told, for example, we should demand defunding of police departments. But here in New York, where I live, politicians engaged in budgetary trickery and then claim to be acting on behalf of the people. The demand for community control of the police and of every public sector agency that has an impact on our lives ought to be the demand. Activists in places like Minneapolis and Chicago have been demanding CPACs, Community Police Accountability Councils, elected bodies which would have the power to hire, fire, and subpoena police and protect the public from brutality. But these mechanisms should be used in every aspect of our lives. Democracy is supposed to mean that the people govern. But right now we have an oligarchy that takes a drug, remdesivir, created by the National Institutes of Health, but which is now the latest example of big pharma control that will charge us more than $2,000 for a 5-day course of treatment, using a drug that was developed with $70 million in government funding. The solidarity economy and mutual aid are what we need to survive. We should not return to a system where petrochemical companies receive government subsidies to produce plastic bags that kill marine life, poison the environment of those countries that have our garbage foisted upon them. Mutual aid is a necessity, not just an option. And cooperative economics is the only way for us to survive. We have an opportunity to work together right now. We must remember that defunding the police and returning to industrialization that slowly kills us are not the demands we should be making. There can't be legal justice or any other kind of justice if we don't commit ourselves to significant change in how we work and what we allow our government to do. It's also a mistake to think that agitation in the streets is solely an anti-Trump phenomenon. It isn't. It's an anti-establishment phenomenon, which Greens can build upon this election year. People know the system doesn't work on their behalf, and they are acutely aware that the political duopoly is either openly hostile to their needs or tries to dupe them into believing they can have an impact by working within a corrupted system. This movement can accomplish great things. It's one of the largest ever in US history, an indication that millions of people are hungry and ready to cast off old ways of doing things and are losing their fear and are prepared to struggle. But we must also take care that the putative leftish party and its donor class are not allowed to co-opt this moment. We have seen this movie as with Occupy, and we know how it ended, with defeat at the hands of the party we're told to follow and a leadership that now works hand in hand with the people they once dubbed the 1%. The way is pretty clear. The nations with the lowest death rates from coronavirus are either fully socialist or have very robust, well-funded public healthcare system. The US has a profit-driven system and inevitable inequality in delivering care. This is a time for optimism, but also for great caution. What passes for government in this country is in fact an arm of finance capital. When we demand community control of the police, we do so knowing that mayors will paint the words Black Lives Matter on the street, and that CEOs will take a knee, and members of Congress will wear kente cloth while also taking a knee. But none of them want power to the people, not in running police departments or making any other decisions which impact our lives. They will fight us tooth and nail, and if we aren't careful, co-opt us into participating in our own destruction. But the people are showing the way with work stoppages at Amazon and Whole Foods and transit workers and other public sector workers demanding safe working conditions. You're also showing the way with your involvement in the Green Party and making it clear that the duopoly will not give us peace, justice, or a protected planet. And let me finish by saying we must also have connections with our friends and allies and comrades in the rest of the world. We cannot have justice in any way when 60% of the federal budget goes to the military-industrial complex, or when we have 800 US military bases all over the world. We have to speak up when the duopoly says that we must all be complicit in starving people in Venezuela or Iran or Cuba or Zimbabwe or Nicaragua or other countries with sanctions. We can't accept a few reforms here while accepting aggressions around the world. And we can't protest against the police while the duopoly allows the 1033 program to provide surplus military equipment to police departments all over the country. The words Black Lives Matter will be meaningless if we do not oppose all of these injustices. This is not the time to allow slogans to substitute for action. Power to the people. Thank you.
Great. Hi, thank you, Margaret. I'm Gloria Mattera, co-chair of the Green Party of New York and also one of the co-chairs of the National Party. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about, so what role does the Green Party play? And just even, I do quickly have to acknowledge another member of the panel and the organization who is going to be here today, Michael O'Neill, a name you probably recognize and like me should be in awe of in terms of what's going to be happening over the next few days. So he could not join us today, but so just a little bit of kind of personalize about this, because I think that I'm hoping people will relate to this a little bit. And so I've been working in public health in New York City for about 30 years and realized early on, you know, what it meant for poor people, for immigrants to be in this two-tiered system, you know, the medical industrial complex, and joined the single payer movement with some real enthusiasm and did the things that the single payer movement's still doing, lobbying and protesting and writing letters. And I pretty much figured out that, you know, I don't think that's going to work with the two corporate parties, the two parties of empire and power here, and started to understand the electoral system. And so I said, okay, I need to dedicate my time to left independent electoral politics. And so I did that in the Labor Party, a union-backed Labor Party back in the 90s, and a member of a socialist organization. And after a while, I kind of figured out the Labor Party didn't want to run candidates against the Democratic Party because we know that the labor union is still very tied there. So, you know, exit Gloria because no Democrats, right? That's the thing. And then the socialist organization just was kind of too confining and had a certain perspective, and that wasn't really it. And so I found the Green Party, essentially first as an independent socialist green candidate back in 2001. And ever since then, for almost 20 years, I've either been a candidate or run campaigns or been an organizer. And I am, you know, proud and openly a Green Party member. But I am also proud and openly a revolutionary, an eco-socialist. And these are not incompatible. And I want, you know, my green comrades here to really think about that, because we may not have time for that now, but I'm happy at some point to talk about there's some little tensions and misperceptions in the party around that. And so, but, you know, we need the Green Party to function as really, you know, the kind of electoral arm of, you know, the movement for eco-socialism, the movement for a solidarity economy. Because, you know, why? First of all, is because we have to contest for power, right? We have to contest for power, and we must defeat empire, or else we don't survive. And so those words may sound a little pie in the sky to some of you. It may sound scary, actually, to some of you, and it's kind of both. But I think it needs to be the foundation from which we start building, doing our party building, running our candidates, you know, building up local organizations. And I really, you know, want to give a real shout out to that candidate questionnaire, focusing on those very 5 important things that the Green Party candidates often campaign on, or that we talk about in our platform, right? And so, but highlighting them the way David did earlier, I think is really important, and I think can be a valuable tool for us. And so, you know, the other reason we want to think about why we want to contest for elections, why we want Greens in office, is because, you know, the state government, right, is what's got they got the vehicle to transfer the power. They're putting the money in places that are defeating us, that are affecting our quality of life in a negative way. And so what we want to do in terms of electing people and participating in electoral campaigns is turn that around, right? Because, as I said, we are contesting for power. I probably said that too many times, but I think sometimes we forget that. And I'm totally down with running campaigns where they're issue campaigns, where we're getting our word out. I understand as a candidate myself in the past that resources and the barriers are limited sometimes, obviously. So the opportunity to talk about these things may be in a smaller venue, but I think being committed to that and saying I am contesting for power, even if we know that the way the corporate elite parties have set up the electoral system currently in this country makes that a challenge. But we also know that we have made some major breakthroughs and some real steps in that, you know, and hats off to the states and the localities in the Green Party that have done that. So we want to say the right, and we know when the money and the power are used against us, and we want to acknowledge, and I think Margaret talked about this, is that, you know, it's often used against most brutally against our Black and brown and trans and immigrant, you know, brothers and sisters. And so that is, we see this movement now building about that, and the optimism and the caution at the same time is really important. And so in thinking about how a political party kind of on the macro level is going to transform the economic system, right? Because we're talking about system change, is things like the Green New Deal, initiatives like that, right? Where we're creating jobs and we're really attacking, you know, the climate crisis, a universal basic income, public healthcare system, right? Healthcare for all, single payer healthcare. And I guess it was at least David, maybe someone else, which I always like to say is like, it's a non-reformist reforms, right? That's what we're working for. And when we don't get there, when those, you know, when empire, you know, rises up and tries to stop us, then we call it out. We call it out at the ballot box. We call it out in the streets. We call it out, you know, in any milieu that we can come together and really, you know, work on this. So, and I would agree that just creating workers' co-ops is not going to be the be all end all, right? If they're building pipelines, if they're producing single-use plastic bags, if they're building weapons, right? So we want to be able to say how we are making the decisions, not only for the current inhabitants and the planet itself, but future generations. I don't know, I have to say I didn't start my clock in time, so if someone's been timing me, but I'll do my best to get to the end point. So, you know, looking at movements without a political party, without some structure, without foundation, without political education. So we can go back to the WTO, we can go to Occupy, the climate justice movement, this most recent movement even that's happening now, right, is what do we have that we can connect to? And I will admit the Green Party is not yet the electoral arm of these movements, of this current movement, of this sea change, this system change that we want to see happen. But I think that there have been pockets of that going forward. That's certainly my commitment, and being involved both in this organization as a Green and the commitment to eco-socialism and solidarity economy does not negate building this Green Party. I think it actually is going to strengthen that. And that's really what I say is like, you know why I'm here, right? And so do you want to join us? And a little bit about kind of who we are as an organization. We're building this organization. We're an ad hoc group of Greens, and revolutionaries and eco-socialists. I think Rich outlined a little bit earlier, you know, some of, what we're looking for in terms of our principles in eco-socialism about social ownership, the production geared towards human needs, that the production decisions are made democratically, that this is really steeped in the sustainability and the compatibility of human life and the earth, because we know that both capitalism and racism are double-headed enemies, and so therefore we're keeping the humans and what rest of the species and the earth kind of all in that category of eco-socialism. And so we're really committed to political discourse. We really feel that that is something that we would like to help enrich our Green Party interactions, because I think that we have done a great job in the electoral arena. We know a lot of Greens around the country really know how to run elections and campaign, but I think looking at how we can have a conversation, a really deep conversation, which we won't be having here, but a little bit in the breakouts, and I think we've given some great resources dropped in the chat, is really what we want to leave you with. And so we want to create a place we can work together, whether you decide to call yourself an eco-socialist or a socialist or a revolutionary or none of those things. What we'd like to do is really invite you to several important things. David mentioned a couple, but on August 8th, the Green Eco-Socialist Network is going to have a webinar where we can really delve into this. You can ask us questions. We can talk more about how we're building this. We're definitely an organization, kind of in the making, and it would really be great to start, building that as a membership group of Greens and others, who are welcome to be part of that, depending on where they kind of sit in the political arena. And I think I'll stop here because we can have some time for the breakouts. Thank you.
Okay, I've set up the breakout rooms, and I've had there's 5 of them, so each one of the presenters have their own room. So am I good to go to set up and put everybody in there? Okay, then I will go ahead and do that.
Okay. Not sure if our administrator is here. Everybody should be back in the main. Oh, there you are. Yeah. If it's possible to still bring everyone back for a real quick follow-up, I realize we're over time.
That's all right. I went ahead and closed all the rooms, so people are coming back now.
Okay, very good.
The next session doesn't start for another 13 minutes or so. I just want to make sure that there's a time to set that up and everything.
Okay, very good. I have stuck in the chat my own email. Not that I don't get plenty of email as it is, but if people do want to follow up, you can go there. And you can also go, I don't know why we're seeing Richard Gomez's screen right now. But I was about to share this as well. Let me see, there we go. This is the website URL for it. Just remember eco-socialism.org. It's still a work in progress, but we have resources up there and other things like that. So hopefully you can avail yourselves of that. And there's a couple different ways that you can stay in touch. Okay. I don't know, do we have everyone back yet? Well, I don't see everybody yet.
All the rooms have been closed, so that would be the everyone who hasn't left the call would be back here.
Hey, everybody. Yes, I think everybody's back. I see David, Margaret, Rich, and did anybody want, David, did you want to say a last word? We're kind of at time or a little over time.
We are at time, so thank you so much to everyone. Just a reminder so Peter asked, is the group chat going to be saved for us to review? So I'll ask Ryan, can you do that? Can you give us a thumbs up? Are you able to do that for us?
I don't know if it's possible to save the chat. I do know that this is being recorded, but I think that just records the video. I don't know if it's possible to.
Hang on. If you go to those three little things, there's a save chat button. But
when I click on them, it just says lock meeting. It doesn't offer me a save chat button.
Okay.
So I think, folks, to Peter and everyone, that you might be able to save the chat yourself, because I know I can, but everyone has to do it themselves. A little personal responsibility as a reminder that that's a Green Party value. So save the chat if you would like. Jay says it should be attached also to the recording. So thank you for that. I want to remind people of two things. One, we have just launched the Green Eco-Socialist Network. You can go to the website and sign up as a dues paying member with a no questions asked waiver available to you. And we would welcome that. And a reminder that when we hit 100 dues paying members, we are going to hold an election for a steering committee. The founders consider ourselves an interim steering committee. We are absolutely going to democratize the Green Eco-Socialist Network as soon as we reach 100 dues payers. The second thing is to invite you all to the August 8th webinar that is will be yet another a deeper dive that won't be as Green Party specific as this one was. But we are eager to be working with you all, and want to encourage you to join us. And if you don't want to join us, that's okay. You don't have to. Remember that this is not an organ or a formal caucus or committee of the Green Party of the United States. Those are my final words, and I would invite Margaret or Gloria or Rich or Anita or Peter if you have any final thoughts.
We do have to open the space now to the next group coming in.
Okay.
But thank you guys very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Brian.
Thanks for being in my group.
Bye.
Everybody.